Hi everyone, welcome to the Womb interviews. We have a very pressing topic today to discuss. To give a brief introduction about it, we, as the second most populated country in the world, surely do not live up to the expectations of our citizens' sexual well being. Our children grow up in the blissful ignorance of sex education, only to gain the wrong knowledge from dangerous sources. As a country, while we agitate when we hear instances of sexual offences, our understanding of it is so crooked that we don't even acknowledge sexual crimes that happen right under our noses, committed by the very people we live with. Apart from sexual offences, there are several other social concerns that exist simply because our society is too conservative to talk about them, like relationships, intimacy, physical and emotional growth during puberty, consent, gender norms, sexual orientation, and many other such topics that are essential that are essential part of a human being's life. And the one subject that covers all of this is sex education. It is a topic that hits right at home for millennials who have grown up knowing the importance of education only to be deprived of it. But Gen Z here has taken upon itself to deal with this issue head on. And they are not only they're not only spreading awareness on the issue, they're demanding the administration to wake up to their responsibilities and teach the subject, not just in a tokenistic manner, but in a comprehensive and inclusive sense. One such proactive Gen Z organization is with us today here. And mincing no words, they are called Sex Education for India. They're aiming to normalize sex education and prioritize the need to teach consent in education institutions. Sania Rehmani, hi Sania.
Hi.
She is the
Okay.
head of sex education for India, and she has joined us today to talk about her organization and all the wonderful things they are doing. Hi Sania, how are you?
Hi. I'm okay, Shivangi. How are you? And
I'm
thank
good,
you
I'm
for
good.
doing such great work. I've seen your website. I've seen everything in the womb. So,
Thank you. We're trying our best to do whatever we can to, empower women, everyone who identifies as a woman, and deal with gender issues. Okay, so let's dive in. My first question to you is sex education, such a hush topic, and it's so hush that people not only don't teach it in schools, they're not even in our curriculum. People like even adults hesitate to discuss it openly and in an informed manner. How and why did you all come together to spread awareness on this topic?
okay. So the thing is, it all started with this horrific accident. I mean, incident, crime. It started with the Hathras case, and we were all very affected by it. We were all, before this, we were just friends. We were just a group chat of teenagers, and we were all very affected by it. We were doing everything we could to be vocal about it. And one of our teammates, she just thought, okay, why is it that every time something like this happens, we're just always striving to get justice, but nobody's ever talking about how to prevent this. Nobody's ever
Yeah.
talking about how we can stop these things from happening in the first place. So, they all made, a tweet thread, which thankfully, with the help of thousands of people, it went viral. And, then I came along and I was like, you know what, this is not enough. We can't just make one thread and forget about it. And, you know,
Hmm.
it has to go on, it has to have a structure, it has to be a movement because people clearly understand that this needs to be done. So, yeah, I guess the rest is history then.
Okay. So why do you think that proper and comprehensive sex education is the need of the hour? What purpose would it serve to educate children of all people about this topic?
Okay, so in all our time of doing this, and I know it hasn't been long, but whatever, every day I find like a new reason why comprehensive sex education is important, and my beliefs just send me. But if you think from a very, like evidence-based perspective, like from a very, study-based thing, you'll know that, it prevents from sexual abuses from happening. It increases uh, bystander intervention. It is helpful in being inclusive. It teaches communication for
Hmm.
transition into a smoother adult life. It prevents teenage pregnancies. But, it's so much more than just about preventing stuff. right?
True.
It's also about affirming a lot of things like your orientation, your gender identity, your desires, and understanding what all of that means with respect to yourself and with respect to other people. And
Yeah.
it's about just leading a life with dignity, personal freedom, and good health. And I think that's something that we all think it's important, but it's not being talked about in our education system. And I think children of all people are, like incredibly resilient. They're open to
Hmm.
knowledge, they're open to new
True.
things. And for whatever's been happening for generations right now, we can slowly change that in the future. But of course, children are much more, uh, they're less repressed right now. They're owning their sexuality, they're owning things because of social media, because of news perspectives, because of
Yeah.
increased exposure to stuff. Yeah,
Yeah. Like a lot of us had to unlearn a lot of things because neither these
right.
things were taught to us, but also very, very like wrong. I would say that is the only way to, say it. Things were taught to us, making, wrong judgments, our prejudices and everything. So we grew up unlearning a lot of stuff instead of just learning. So, how do you deal with the strong stigma that is attached to this topic? Sex before marriage is something people are not even ready to acknowledge, let alone educate themselves about it. So, how do you address the questions and the need of the need of the hour to educate children about the topic and defy the abstinence-based approach that we have on this topic today?
So there's of course like an undeniable stigma. I'm not gonna say no to that. Like we've seen
Yeah.
it multiple. So, but there's also like so much evidence about just how much we need this, especially if in Indian society. Just pick up a newspaper on a random day and you'll know how much we need this. And
Yeah.
we get a lot of hate comments and we get, a lot of people who don't agree with us in a certain, place. But the fact is that we also get a lot of positive messages. We get people saying like, okay, we didn't know about this. This got prevented because of this piece of information, which is something that needs to be highlighted. That people just let's just take an example, like teenage
Hmm.
people, right? They have to go through a lot of abuse and they can't talk to people about it. But if you do teach them that it's okay to reach out, it's okay, they should know how to intervene, they should know how to ask for help. And a lot of that happens in sex ed. So, that's one of the reasons why we can keep doing it. And I think uh, making it relatable to everyday scenarios helps
Hmm.
eradicate a lot of the stigma,
Yes.
right? And like I think it has helped at least for us in like in personal spaces. Like if you ask me to tell my parents like a couple of years ago that I had an organization with the name sex in it, I would have called you crazy and I would have said keep your voice down. But now it's all cool, and now we're all nine of us, we're all discussing this in our homes, we're discussing it with our friends. And I think even a little bit of that change brings a lot of ripple effect.
Yeah, you can see these conversations getting normalized at home, getting normalized amongst our peers, right? And that's the aim of it, to normalize the stuff.
Yeah, and even like what you said about, defying abstinence-based approach,
Yeah.
it's not just about defying it, right? It's about, okay,
Hmm.
so abstinence-based approach is a part of sex ed. It can be
Hmm.
included into inclusive comprehensive sex education because you can tell them they need to have all the information because before they make decisions. So it's like,
Hmm.
okay, the only way to prevent STDs or pregnancies is abstinence, but if you want to choose to do this, these are the
Yeah.
options, right?
Yeah. Like everyone should know what is the right thing to do and at what point of time. The people need to be well informed about this,
Yeah.
right? And how important do you think sex ed should be comprehensive and inclusive? Because whatever we get as of now it's just very anatomical and it's
Yeah.
very binary. It talks about only
Yeah.
two genders and very heteronormative. So how important do you think that sex ed should be inclusive and comprehensive in all senses possible.
Yeah. Actually, anything that isn't inclusive is not comprehensive sex education. I'll say it
Yeah,
very clearly. Even whatever we get in school, it's not sex ed, it's biology, it's reproductive biology.
biology. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think for the LGBTQ community, I think it's really important to let everyone know that their experiences are just as valid and important as any cishet person's. And a lot of the times, the whole, like you said, the heteronormative idea, it stems around the fact that, sex is basically for reproduction, which is the main
Yeah.
topic that anyone is comfortable talking about, at least in
Hmm.
India. But which is just simply not true. Like, only 1% of all sexual activities are related to reproduction, 99% is
Hmm.
pleasure. And I think once we start
Yeah.
talking about this, and once we start, you know, eradicating the idea that sex is just penis and vagina sex, that's,
Hmm.
something that we can work towards. And that's how we, include people, more diverse people, people with different experiences. And,
Hmm.
we try to use language that's as inclusive as possible. Like, just
Hmm.
one example that, you know, uh, including trans people. So it's not when you're talking about women, when you're talking about biology, you're talking about people with vulvas, or you're talking about
Hmm.
people with penises. But when you're talking about
Yeah.
social experiences, when you're talking about it in general, then you can say women, because that includes everyone who identifies as a woman or everyone who identifies as a man, right? So
Yeah.
I think being inclusive in that sense is really important. So at least in one subject or in one sphere where they
Hmm.
feel like, something important related to their life is being talked about, they don't feel left out. Like, okay, this has nothing to do with me. This does not relate to my experiences, right?
Or just invalidate their experiences and their understanding of things.
Yeah.
But also, like sex ed is just not scientific information. It also includes conversations around consent, attraction, relationships, societal norms, etc. So, how do you include all these topics in your content?
So it's about initiation of conversations around the fact that, literally everything physical related to sex, that you can, you could know all of that, but if
Hmm.
you still can't manage your emotions, or you still can't assess how to, behave in situations when someone might be uncomfortable, or how to assess consent, then all of that might not be very fruitful for you, right? I
Yeah.
can know
Yeah.
all the, I can know all the scientific words and still not going to be useful in, real life. So
Yeah.
it's also very emotionally and, psychologically connected. So you have to talk
Yeah.
about all of that. Otherwise, it's just reproductive biology other than that. And receiving and understanding consent is rather like a major part of what we talk about. And, relationships don't just exist in a vacuum. There are so many
Yeah.
factors to it that, go unnoticed and need to be addressed. So, yeah, and we try to talk to people when it comes to inclusivity. I know we can't always deliver in the,
Hmm.
all the aspects. So we try to talk to different people and, ask for their experiences in that specific community, in that space. So we're not taking up, every narrative. We're just expressing ours. We're asking other people to express theirs so that people can relate.
Hmm. Right. And as we talked about the abstinence-based approach, there's a lot of controversy around underage consensual sex. So, how do you address questions on this?
Um, so yeah, in all honesty, there could be
Yeah.
two possible explanations as to why
Hmm.
the the conversation is so controversial. Okay,
Yeah.
so the one is a very safety-based approach and a legal point of view, right? Which I completely understand. And it's also important considering how high crimes against children are and how high, sexual abuse is on children. So I understand that completely. But the other is just like the taboo of their sexual expression, which is
Hmm.
considered shameful and, somewhat devious because of all the stigma attached to sex itself. But
Hmm.
what has what has to be kept in mind is that sexual expression begins at different ages for different people. And
Right.
us as educators, we can't discourage someone. Like, okay, if this 16-year-old says, like, okay, I am ready for this, and this is my enthusiastically, consensually agreeing partner, and we can't just be like, okay, no, wait 2 years. Otherwise, it's
Yeah.
not legal. We're not going to say that, right? Because,
Yeah.
we don't want to constrict their expression as it has been by the society and what it has been at home, maybe, or in other places. Because we do aim to, make it a safe space for everyone. So again, it just comes back to giving them all the information
Hmm.
and making them decide for themselves. And if you actually think about it, like if you see from the surveys, if you see from, what studies have been done, you'd know that people who get comprehensive sex ed are much more likely to delay sexual initiation because they
Hmm.
have all the information, right? And they
Yeah.
can make good, informed, and, decisions that they're happy about and decisions that they
Yeah.
care about. Yeah.
Yeah.
And, just telling them no straight up will just make it an unsafe environment, and it increases the margin for something unwanted or unpleasant happening.
Something
And
impulsive.
yeah, which is something we're trying to avoid anyway.
Yeah. Okay. So, how do you educate yourself on the subject? Because it is important that, the information you are giving out, they are coming from the right sources. How do you ensure that your content is authentic and appropriate for everyone?
Yeah, okay. So you'd be surprised at how much people have talked about sex ed. It's just not in
Yeah.
India. Like we don't see it happening, but there's a
Yeah.
whole conversation around it. There are experts who've made, comprehensive guides and books and stuff. Like it's just as authentic as any other subject, if you ask me, right? And
Yeah.
there's so many international organizations. Let's just say Planned Parenthood or CICUS, or even in India, if
Hmm.
you're talking about there's Starshi. So there's a lot of stuff that's already happening. It's, you accumulate all of that, you relate it to your own audience, you make sure it's fact checked. We make sure
Yeah.
everything that's going out on our page has at least been fact checked 3 times. So, there's no margin for error. There's slim to none. And, as far as appropriate is concerned, we try to make sure we're not unintentionally harming any community or
Yeah.
talking about an experience that doesn't belong to us. And
Yeah.
we're being as inclusive as possible, we're being as positive as possible so that people know that there's no shame in coming to us and talking about something, no matter how, restricted or hushed that topic may be.
Yeah. Also, talk about your team a little. Like, how many people are there? What age group are they? And how do you all come together and work?
Okay, so we're like 9 people. I am
Hmm.
the ideation head, so I make sure the content and the research and everything gets done, and then it gets accumulated properly. Then there's
Okay.
8 other people, and we're all almost, we're all young adults. A couple of us are in their teenage years, like 16, 17.
Yeah.
So yeah, and that's I think the reason why we talk about teen stuff much, well, because we can relate to it. We can actually see where all these people, thousands of teenagers on our page are coming from. We know what's happening. So I think that helps a lot. And yeah,
Yeah.
so everyone has their own departments. Everyone is good at what they do. And I think that helps a lot. So at least even us, we don't feel like we're alone. We have something to talk to, someone to talk to. And it's been a great experience for us as well because my life is not at all similar to what it was 8 months ago.
Yeah. That like is true for almost everyone at this point. So,
Yeah.
who is your target audience exactly? Because your content is on Instagram, and mostly it's the teenagers and the millennials, and fairly younger people are the
Hmm.
ones who consume content on Instagram. So, how do you ensure that your content is reaching your target audience?
So we don't have like a specific target audience. Like a lot of content that we make is based around teen and young adults. niche
Yeah.
because, like I said, we relate to it and we can understand what's happening in their life. Like we hear it every day from our friends. Okay, half of my content is just based on my friend's life. you know, like this happened in someone else's life. So we're just like, okay, what is behind this? What is the implication of this? How can we
Right.
stop it? But again, there's like, we want to target an older audience. We want to, like you said, Gen Zs and millennials are our whole audience. We want to go to the boomers. We really do.
Yeah.
Because we can make change like, slowly and, in a place where we actually, have a say and people actually value our opinion. Not that they don't right now, but still.
Yeah.
And, but boomers, they get to make changes right now. They need to understand that their generation has been a little too domineering when it comes to topic
Hmm.
around, sexual
Yeah.
health or rights or pleasure. And, they can change things right now, right? And
Yeah.
I think we connect with our current audience pretty well. I would love to see, the community to expand to different demographics, age, different diverse narratives. And, we're planning on working towards that a lot more now.
Yeah. And as things like after the initial lockdown last year, a lot of people have come back home, and I see there's more conversation between millennials and boomers as well. Because once people graduate, they usually go out and don't, care about these things at their homes. Like they are all in when it comes to spreading awareness in the masses, but the conversation gets uncomfortable at home. But like I've seen people opening up at their homes as well, and having an honest conversation that what their parents could have done, what might have hurt them in their childhood, and what they should do
That's
now.
probably the only plus of the lockdown.
Yeah, probably. Oh my God, let's not get into that. That might open a lot of floodgates here. So, like as you said, people in authority, like currently boomers are there, and they haven't done much. In fact, they have done the opposite of it. As you can see, the national education policy in 2020 that came out has absolutely no mention of sex education, and we already have a very, very abysmal, you know, situation when it comes to sex ed, and we don't see any ray of hope also anymore. At least the previous education policy like mentioned sex ed, but the new one, as people are like praising it for their overhauling the entire education system, but still something as important as sex education is not even mentioned. Like the word is not even mentioned. So how do you think people can change that? And like, do you have any hopes from the system that things might change soon?
Okay. I think the reason that decision makers aren't really actively discussing the topic is because there's so much stigma that there's no room for pressure. And this is India. Nothing gets done without you, like pushing it
Pressure, I
actively.
think. Yeah.
Yeah. And, unless that stigma gets, at least lifted a little, we can't do the strong push that we need from everyone in our generation, especially. And until we can make everyone believe that we really need this and how beneficial it is, we can't pressure the decision makers and the government to do anything. And I think, my biggest takeaway or advice would be, just like ask questions, make people uncomfortable, you know, start talking about this. If you think that, okay, something, chances are maybe you don't, like it's
Hmm.
from what I've learned, you think you know something, but it's actually like so much more to it, right? So start talking to your parents, your guardians, your, teachers in your life, everyone. And honestly, everyone in my team, like we're not naive enough to think that we can have any hopes from the system in
Yeah,
regards to,
change everything in
substantial
one
change.
night. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not gonna happen. Uh,
Yeah.
but it's not gonna happen so soon. But again, we're not going anywhere. We're here for the long run, and we'll work our ass off to make sure, like at least the times ahead are better and less confusing than what has happened already.
Correct. Right. So, any parting thoughts before we end the interview? Anything you want to say for our audience and things you just expect from your project? Like, what will you ultimately achieve, and how do you think like people will behave after your content is out and people are getting more informed?
I'll tell you what, I've seen change happening on a very, like a small level, and I'm really happy with
Hmm.
that. But, I would
Yeah.
really love to see, people being more accepting. Like I said, I want to see more diverse narratives, and I've, become aware of a lot of them. And, just the fact that I think one of our main things have always been creating a safe space. And that's
Yeah.
all we
Right.
want to do. That, just people get to live their life, they get to experience it, they get to enjoy it in whatever way they choose, right? And, like I said before, ask a bunch of questions, make a lot of boomers uncomfortable. That's our only hope, trust me.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, since the kind of work I do, I'm also labeled activist and feminist, obviously. So, like, a lot of people who usually, throw around sexist jokes, stuff like that, in my presence, they get uncomfortable. And when I start asking questions, they get more and more uncomfortable. And it's fun to see because, like, at the end of the day, they know what they're saying is wrong and they can't defend what they're saying. And,
Yeah,
but they don't understand the repercussions of, normalizing a lot of
yeah.
sexist and offensive stuff, right? So yes,
I see it
asking
happening.
questions, yeah,
Yeah.
asking questions make a lot of change at the ground level.
I'll just be dumb enough and be like, okay, so someone cracks like a sexist joke, or one time they were shaming someone I know, and I'm like, okay, why do you think this is? And they're just like, what? And there's like they don't have an explanation. They don't have an explanation as to why they're hurting people, or as to why they're unintentionally, doing whatever they're doing. So, I think, yeah, asking questions is such a huge part of this.
Yeah, and I also think that it makes change at a bigger level, like something as influential as the media industry. We all have grown up listening to extremely sexist, extremely offensive songs, but I can see people like calling them out now, and
Yeah,
people who make all of this stuff getting a little, you know, they're a little apprehensive about their stuff now, and they're being more and more cautious about what content they're putting. There's better stuff on internet to watch than what we had growing up, right? And like
yeah, because they
they're
know.
improving, yeah, they'll
Yeah,
be
they
called
know
out,
once
and
Twitter outrages, yeah, they're done.
yes, they are done. Yeah, it's good to see like better content to watch, and good to see so many Instagram influencers or like social media influencers talk about these things and normalize it, just like you guys do it, right? So that people don't think that this is like something at like for like people who are not like us, they can relate. They can like all kinds of people can relate to it, from wherever, whichever background they come from, right?
Yeah. Okay.
So this has been a fun conversation. Also super important. I'm so happy that all you kids are doing this. I don't know why I'm calling you kids. I'm not much older than you, but just something, me and my friends from school, we thought of doing this, but we just didn't have like, enough resources or access to social media as much. Especially from like such a small town I am from, people are still getting accustomed to,
Yeah.
everything internet. But it's good to see so many like your content reaching, not just urban areas but all rural small towns everywhere, and people are actually relating to it, and people are
Yeah.
understanding ki, oh yeah, this is something we should know and we should work upon if we haven't. So even if it's not reaching boomers yet, it's reaching the right audience. People are anyway, like kids grow up on their own in a lot of sense, so
Yeah.
it's
And
helping people. It's yeah,
if they feel like it's important to them, like they're the main reason we're all talking about this, which it is, then,
yeah,
they'll pay more attention, they'll talk to more people about it. It'll become a casual conversation, which is all that we're
yeah,
aiming for in the short run right now.
yeah. Especially when it comes to someone their own age, not from like an influential, bigger personality who's talking about this.
Yeah.
It's not intimidating. It's relatable,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, it's
So
like it's not idolizing someone. It's just like, okay, they're just like us. They're doing this because, it's something happening in their life and it's also something happening in my life. And,
hmm,
wow, great. I never knew this information. So I think that's helped a lot.
yeah. So thank you, Sania, for joining us. This was a very informative conversation, and I hope we can collaborate on some project in future. And I hope your organization,
Okay.
grow bigger and bigger, and has a even bigger audience, and just like fulfill the purpose. Yes,
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I had a great time. I really did. And, it's great to talk to someone who actually, is working towards something very similar and, helping people out. And really, thank you so much for having me.
thank you, Sania.